my life. I crown thee now. Thine shall the glory be. Lest I forget thy thorn crown brow. Lead me, Jesus, to Calvary. Lest I forget how you prayed on Gethsemane in the garden. And lest I forget how you suffered your agony on Calvary.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is an excellent day to serve an excellent God in and with the spirit of excellence. Good morning, good night, good evening, good midnight, whatever your case may be. I greet you in the name of the Anointed One. I greet you in divine love on this 20th day of Lent. I pray that all is well with you. I pray that last night's rest was what you needed, that you didn't have any major disruptions in the night. I pray that this day is going to bring you peace, pleasure, and prosperity. In other words, I pray that this is going to be a good day. Listen, today is the 20th day of our Lenten journey. We are 20 days in. That means that we are 20 days away from the grand finale. 20 days we have been decreasing in those spiritual and religious practices that have not served us well. We are increasing in religious practices, spiritual practices that will change our being internally, which means if it changes internally, it will manifest in our religious practices externally. Spiritual internally, external are the religious practices. And so we made a pact early on that at day 41, come resurrection day, right? The grand finale, that we are not going to pick up those things that have not served us well. That's why we were real careful not to just fast from candy and soda and social media and all of those things. Excuse me, drop something. Because we know that we are not going to be able to stay off of social media for long periods of time. We understand how many of us went into panic when we were trying to figure out why Facebook and Instagram and all of those meta platforms were not working, right? So if you were like me, you tried to change your password, you tried to do all of those things because surely those things did not serve you well. They did not serve you well. Excuse me, I had a situation here. So just bear with me because I am coming back. So you're able to hear me, but you may not be able to see me. There I am. I am back. So on this 20th day of Lent, of our 40-day journey to the cross, we are fasting from leavened bread. We are fasting from leavened bread. Good morning, y'all. If you're just coming in, I had a disruption where one of my cameras went out and I had to readjust and all of that kind of stuff. We're fasting from leavened bread. Sherry, what are you talking about? As we continue this journey and as Jesus continues his journey, he intensifies in calling out and rebuking religious leaders. Good morning, Sharon. Good morning. He intensifies in his teachings and the parables that he gives, and they are geared toward the chief priests, the high-ranking religious leaders, for their hypocrisy. We talked about it in Matthew 23, how Jesus calls them out and tells them, like, you know all the rules, you know all the laws, you know all the scriptures, you know all of the rituals, you know all of those things, but yet you yourself, you don't do them. And it does not matter, Jesus seems to be telling them and us. It does not matter how much you know the rules. It does not matter how many scriptures you know and how you can quote them. Because what you have done is, in all of that religious stuff, you have missed the weightier matters of faith, justice, he tells them that in Matthew 23. This is the reason why the religious leaders, the chief priests, those in authority, set out to take Jesus down. Remember, they go in asking him, by whose authority, who do you think you are to come in and try to upset what we have going on? So as Jesus is heading toward the cross, between Passion Week or Holy Thursday or Monday, Thursday, or at least that Thursday, Jesus spends a lot of time during Passover week speaking to religious folk. 1/3 of Jesus' parables and 2/3 of his teachings during Passion Week were spoken to or directed to religious folk, high-ranking folk, the chief priests who were in charge of the temple sacrifices. They were in charge of the things of God, right? To help people to make their sacrifices in the temple. Yet, they were cheating the people. So when you look at the parables and the teachings, Jesus always directed the lessons against those who were supposed to be doing the right thing. So on this 20th day of Lent, we are fasting from leavened bread. We are fasting from leavened bread. Okay, Sherry, help me. Now, I'm going to help you, but you got to help me, which means that you got to remind me to keep applying this makeup while I'm talking and stop holding these tools and products in my hand and doing something with them. So I'm going to try to talk and apply this makeup at the same time. But lately, it has not been working. So let's go back to leavened bread. We are fasting from leavened bread. You remember that when they were to escape from Egypt, you got to go back. Remember, the old and the new for Christians tied together. The old and the new for Christians tied together. The Old Testament and the New Testament tied together for Christians. Why am I saying for Christians? Because what we call the Old Testament for our Jewish brothers and sisters is the Hebrew Bible. It is just simply the Hebrew Bible. There would not need to be a Old Testament because there's not a New Testament, right? We're teaching just a little bit. I'm trying to tie it together. For our Jewish, even for Jesus, watch this, who was not a Christian. Jesus was not a Christian. Jesus was not a Christian. I need you to just come in and let me know that we got that point down pat and put it in the comment section that Jesus was not a Christian. Jesus, like all Jews, and he was a Palestinian Jew, only had the Torah and the prophets. Which means that Jesus only had what we would know as the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. And then again, back then it wasn't no Bible. So let me just don't spend a whole lot of time on that. But what I'm trying to say is that it all ties together. So when we talk about leavened bread, you have to go back to the Old Testament. You got to go back to Egypt. You got to go back to Exodus because this is where it all started. When they were to leave, when they were to make haste and leave, they did not have time to put yeast or leaven in the bread, in their dough. And so therefore, yeast was added. It was added so that the bread will rise. Well, they didn't have time for that. If y'all go all the way to today, just think about way back in the day, your communion bread was not to have any yeast in it. It was to add yeast, it would have been leavened. We are fasting from leavened bread. Okay, so let's go. This may be difficult to get, but I promise you, Jesus says in, let's see here. We'll make sure we get it. Well, first of all, yeast became a symbol of what was left behind. Remember, because they could not add anything. And so yeast symbolized, or leaven symbolized for those leaving Egypt, what they left behind. They left behind bondage. They left behind corruption. They left behind hypocrisy. Jesus is telling the religious folk in Luke 12:1, be on your guard against the yeast of Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. That's Luke 12:1. Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. Beware of the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. So when you look at the teachings of Jesus, when you look at the parables of the two sons, the parables of the tenants, the parable of the wedding banquet, the parable of the tax collector, the 10 virgins, the talents, the fig tree, the sheep, and the goat. If you really look at these parables, the morals of it or the lessons of it, Jesus was calling out those folk who were supposed to be doing the right thing, but yet Jesus accuses them of greed, self-righteousness, and self-indulgence. Now, this fast that we're talking about, this is for church folk. Jesus is calling out hypocrisy that you're adding to. Remember, yeast is added to the dough to make it rise. We are fasting from adding to. We want to leave behind hypocrisy, greed, bondage, all of those things. And guess what? When the religious leaders found out, I need to be finishing up. When the religious leaders found out that Jesus was talking about them, they decided we got to do something about him. They stepped up their efforts to get Jesus executed. They set up their efforts to get rid of Jesus because he is messing with their systems and practices that keeps them in power and keeps other folk in bondage. I hope you can see the themes here. I hope you can see the themes of what's happening. See, when you mess with people's money, when you mess with people's power, you got to be ready for the consequences. What they say, don't mess with my honey or my money. Y'all heard that before, right? Good morning, everybody. If you're just coming in, please say good morning so that I can properly greet you this morning. Let me know that you are here. Let me know that you are here. Today is the 20th day of Lent, and we are fasting from leavened bread. We are fasting from hypocrisy. As Jesus is headed toward the cross, he's calling out the religious leaders. He is calling out those people who are supposed to be helping God's people. See, the chief priests the chief priests were in charge of the temple sacrifices. They were in charge of the holy things of God, yet they got in cahoots with Rome and doing the bidding of Rome, and they were cheating the people. If I said it once, I've said it 5,000 million trillion gazillion times. If you want to upset God, treat God's people any kind of way. If you want to upset God and cause God to flip over some tables, cheat the people. Treat the people harshly. Jesus said, I come to set people free, but yet what we do is put people in bondage. Jesus says, be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Saying one thing and doing another. My friends, let me just tell you something. I don't care how much. Y'all done got caught up again. I need to really be getting dressed and y'all ain't helping me. I don't care if you can quote every scripture, every jot, every tittle. I don't care if, and we were teasing, if we were teasing, a friend of mine, we were teasing about, we used to have these Bible drills in church way back in the day in BTU where we had to do those. Now, I know that might be a new, yes, Dr. Sharon, it's today. We used to have these Bible drills, sword drills where you had to find the scriptures real fast, right? Or we had to memorize verses. I was way back, right? My church sent me to the National Sunday School and BTU Congress in Fort Worth, Texas. I'll never forget it. I might have been in 5th, 6th grade, whatever grade I was, won first place because I was able to, it was a memory verse contest, right? They either gave you a John 3:16 and you had to quote, for God so loved the world, right? Or they said, for God so loved the world, and you had to do John 3:16. So that means that if you got all of them right, you were the winner. I was the winner. My family, my daddy, my mama, and them, that summer before leading up to that contest, baby, they drove me with those scriptures. I mean, I couldn't play outside. I couldn't do any of those things. They drove me with those scriptures. Every time you looked around, my daddy, and I just vividly remember him drilling me on those verses. I won, but let me just tell you today, I don't know scriptures like that. I cannot tell you, Ezekiel 5 and 6 says, right? I'm not that kind. I can't do that. I can tell you somewhere up in Ezekiel it says, and my chief always tells me, I don't understand. You don't, you say you don't know verses. I don't spend a lot of time memorizing verses. I really don't. I really try my best to live the verses. And that's what Jesus is telling these religious folk. Oh, you could quote them. You can quote them. I got to give it to you. You can quote them. You win the prize. You win the contest for quoting. But your practices don't line up. He says, beware of, be on guard. Be on guard against the yeast of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. And so today, on this 20th day of Lent, we are fasting from leavened bread. We are fasting from leavened bread. We're getting closer, my friends, to Calvary. But I want us to take note that Jesus steps it up a bit in his rebuke of religious leaders. And by the time we get to Holy Week, by the time we get to Passion Week, by the time we get to that final march, they have gotten what they wanted. They've gotten enough evidence. They've stepped up. The religious folk, right? They've stepped up their antics to get him out of the way. That's what happens when you speak up and against hypocrisy, systems, and practices that causes harm to another, that sets people over another. It's a problem. And people are trying, and they will try to take you out. But on Palm Sunday, on that triumphant entry day, Jesus makes this grand statement. He says, you can try to silence me. You can try to silence those people who are shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna. You can try to silence them, but if you do, the rocks are going to cry out for me. There will always be somebody who will speak up for Jesus. There will always be somebody on the front line of calling stuff out. On this 20th day of Lent, of our 40-day journey to the cross, we are fasting from leavened bread. We don't want to be among the accused. We don't want to be among the religious folk that Jesus says to watch out for. Y'all be blessed and may all be well.